There's a hidden current beneath every conversation, a silent choreography of gestures, glances, and micro-movements that reveal the truth no one dares to speak. People believe words hold power, yet words are only camouflage. The real game unfolds in the pauses between them, in the subtle tightening of a jaw, in the delayed blink, in the way someone stands when they think no one is watching. Power doesn't announce itself. It's implied, felt, transmitted through the body like an unspoken signal of dominance or submission. This is the invisible battlefield where manipulation thrives. Those who rely only on language are always the last to know they've been conquered. They argue, defend, explain, while their opponents are already reading every sign of weakness in their posture. The world isn't ruled by those who speak the loudest, but by those who can see. Machiavelli understood that control isn't maintained through words, but through perception, through the mastery of appearance. In this hidden dialogue of bodies, the manipulator smiles not to express warmth, but to test obedience. The confident man doesn't need to move. His stillness commands more attention than any gesture. The unaware play their roles unknowingly, broadcasting their insecurities for everyone trained to notice. This is why true power is never noisy. It's observed, not declared. To master this language is to see through the illusion of charm, kindness, even love itself, recognizing when it's real and when it's strategic. And once you learn to read what others reveal without realizing, the world changes shape. You no longer hear conversations. You decode them. You stop reacting. You start commanding. Niccolò Machiavelli, centuries before psychology gave language to the unconscious, had already mapped the invisible mechanics of human behavior. He understood that power was never secured through mere words or moral posturing, but through the manipulation of perception, the art of appearing rather than being. To him, every court, every kingdom, every social circle was a theater where gestures, pauses, and tone carried more weight than decrees or intentions. The ruler who mastered appearances could govern minds without lifting a sword. The diplomat who understood the silent choreography of respect and fear could win wars without battle. Machiavelli's brilliance was not cruelty but clarity. He stripped away illusions and saw human nature as it is, strategic, performative, instinctively hierarchical. Long before body language experts and behavioral scientists, he knew that every interaction is a power exchange disguised as conversation. The nod of approval, the subtle retreat of the body, the micro-smile of contempt. These are the real instruments of influence. While others chase idealism, the Machiavellian mind studies reactions. He sees not the words spoken, but the patterns hidden beneath them. Who flinches first, who maintains eye contact, who breaks silence. For him, silence itself was a weapon, a mirror that reveals the other's insecurity. Most people move unconsciously within this dance, unaware that every motion they make announces their psychological position, predator or prey, superior or subordinate. Machiavelli's writings were not a manual for manipulation, but a revelation. The world runs on perception, not truth, and only those who can read and shape perception truly hold power. Every social environment, from the boardroom to the dinner table, operates as an unspoken hierarchy. People pretend equality exists, yet instinctively submit or dominate based on invisible cues that bypass logic entirely. Power doesn't shout. It hums quietly through posture, eye contact, breathing rhythm, and stillness. The confident individual doesn't need to prove authority. Their presence calibrates the entire room. Those around them unconsciously adjust their tone, their gestures, even their emotional energy. This is the essence of psychological dominance, influence that requires no words because it is communicated somatically. The manipulator understands this, even if only intuitively. They know that charm is a mask and warmth a lure. Their voice softens, their eyes linger, their body subtly mirrors yours, all to create rapport and dissolve resistance. Yet beneath that softness there's calculation. Their body betrays tiny leaks of truth, a fleeting smirk when you yield, a micro-tightening of the shoulders when you resist. The naive interpret these gestures as empathy, while the perceptive see them for what they are, behavioral tactics designed to control. In every group there's a magnetic pull toward the one who embodies calm control, and an equal tendency to obey those who project certainty. The danger is that manipulation often wears the costume of kindness. The most effective predators don't intimidate, they comfort. They lower your guard, then steer your decisions as if they were your own. Yet, the body never lies. Even the most skilled deceiver cannot fully mask the unconscious signals of hunger, insecurity, or dominance. Power is not something people claim, it's something they emit. The body is the transmitter, and those who learn to read these signals can see the real hierarchy behind every conversation, the one that governs silently beneath the polite illusion of equality. Once you awaken to this hidden layer of communication, the world begins to look disturbingly different. What once felt like casual interaction now feels like a battlefield of intentions. You start to recognize the choreography, how people angle their bodies to appear open while secretly protecting themselves, how a pause before answering signals hesitation or deceit, how laughter can disguise a subtle act of domination. Every conversation becomes a negotiation of energy. You can sense when someone's words are aligned with their body and when they are not. You catch the flicker of triumph in someone's eyes when they think they've manipulated you successfully. You feel the sudden coldness of a gaze when power shifts, when your silence unsettles someone accustomed to control. This awareness sharpens you, but it also isolates you. You begin to understand why most people prefer blindness, because seeing this deeply removes the comfort of illusion. You can no longer take gestures at face value. Every compliment feels like a test, every apology like a strategy. The same charm that once made you feel safe now triggers suspicion, because you see the mechanics of influence behind it. It's not paranoia, it's perception, and perception is heavy. The awakened eye never rests. It scans, decodes, analyzes. You start to realize that much of human connection is transactional, driven by subtle attempts to assert control, to secure validation, to win invisible dominance games. And yet, amidst that clarity, you feel the weight of knowing too much. You can't return to innocence. You can't unlearn the truth that beneath politeness often lies power play, and beneath warmth often hides control. Awareness becomes both armor and burden, protection from deception, but separation from comfort. Awareness grants freedom, but it also steals comfort. Once you begin to perceive the hidden architecture of manipulation, the world loses its simplicity. You can no longer participate in it naively, and that loss of innocence is irreversible. You see affection turn transactional, apologies calculated, and humility performed like a strategy of disarmament. You recognize that even kindness can be a negotiation for influence, and that most people don't mean harm. They simply act from instinctive self-interest they no longer question. Yet this understanding distances you. You move through rooms filled with laughter and conversation, but feel detached, like an observer behind glass. Every interaction becomes transparent, every motivation visible, and the beauty of spontaneity fades under the microscope of awareness. You stop being deceived, but you also stop belonging. This is the paradox of consciousness. Clarity isolates. Like Machiavelli, who studied human nature not out of cruelty but precision, you start to realize that once you grasp the code of behavior, you can't unsee its mechanics. You watch others perform their social dances, flattery, false modesty, moral outrage, and you feel as though you're reading the script before the play begins. But unlike the actors, you cannot act unconsciously anymore. You speak less, observe more, and notice the fatigue that comes from constant perception. You understand power, yet feel the quiet burden of holding it ethically. You can manipulate if you choose, but doing so feels like self-betrayal. You crave honesty in a world built on performance, and though your vision protects you from deceit, it also denies you the ease of ignorance. The light of awareness illuminates everything, but it burns away illusion. And with illusion, much of human warmth disappears. The more your perception refines, the more unbearable the theater of human interaction becomes. Every gesture starts to look rehearsed, every phrase like part of a predictable script. You begin to realize that the only way to preserve clarity is to withdraw from the noise. Not in hatred, but in discipline. You stop responding immediately. You speak less, not because you lack words, but because you finally understand their futility when thrown into unconscious chaos. Stillness becomes your form of communication. A glance replaces argument. A pause becomes your defense. You start to recognize that manipulators feed on reaction, the emotional spark that gives them material to work with. When you stop giving that energy, their game collapses. Your silence becomes a mirror that exposes their hunger for validation and control. What once felt like retreat now feels like sovereignty. This withdrawal is not isolation, it's refinement. You are no longer trapped in the rhythm of others' unconscious movements. You choose when to engage and when to let emptiness answer for you. In this space of observation, you notice how few people can stand silence, how quickly they fill it with explanations, excuses, performances. The manipulator thrives in dialogue, but dies in stillness. Because silence cannot be deceived, it forces truth to surface. Machiavelli would call this the supreme strategy, the art of mastering presence so completely that no reaction is required. This is not passivity, it's invisible control, the kind that radiates authority without confrontation. When you withdraw psychologically, you stop being a player in the manipulator's drama. You become the stage upon which their mask begins to fall. Observe carefully, and the patterns begin to repeat themselves regardless of context or culture. There's the coworker who compliments you just a little too often, subtly priming your trust before asking for a favor. Their words sound generous, but their eyes measure your response, gauging how easily you'll bend. Then there's the romantic partner who seems to mirror you perfectly, your gestures, your tone, your rhythm. It feels like connection, but it's imitation, a calculated reflection meant to dissolve your defenses until your emotions can be guided like a current. In offices and governments alike, you'll see the quiet leader, the one who rarely raises his voice. People lower theirs automatically in his presence, sensing an invisible boundary they can't name. His authority doesn't come from aggression, but from economy. Each movement deliberate, each word unnecessary. Machiavelli would have seen this as the embodiment of his principle, the ruler who rules without appearing to rule. True control never requires declaration. It exists in the subtle orchestration of perception. Even outside positions of status, the same dynamics unfold. The friend who constantly confides in you to create obligation, the colleague who plays humble while seeding guilt in others to gain moral advantage, the influencer who pretends authenticity to capture loyalty. Each of these figures understands the Machiavellian law. Behavior manipulates reality more effectively than speech ever could. You begin to notice the choreography of power in everyday life. The timing of touch, the calculated laugh, the self-deprecating joke that invites sympathy while asserting control. None of it is accidental. Every human interaction at some level is a performance of hierarchy. The difference is that manipulators rehearse their roles while the unaware simply react. Once you see this, you stop believing in coincidence. You start to recognize patterns, and patterns reveal intent. Most people mistake charisma for goodness because they've been trained to equate charm with virtue. Yet charisma is rarely innocent. It is often a refined form of dominance, the art of bending attention without appearing to demand it. The voice, the rhythm, the calculated vulnerability, all of it designed to create emotional gravity. And empathy, when performed without depth, becomes the most elegant tool of control. The manipulator doesn't conquer through fear, they conquer through connection. They make you feel seen, so you lower your defenses, then subtly guide your choices while you believe you're acting freely. This is why awareness is liberation. The point isn't to grow cynical or withdraw in suspicion, but to perceive reality without illusion, to see the structure of the game without resenting it. When you begin to witness how unconscious theater governs most interactions, something inside you shifts. You stop reacting, you start observing. The emotional hooks no longer catch because you've learned to recognize the bait. You no longer confuse intensity with truth, confidence with competence, or warmth with safety. Machiavelli's wisdom wasn't darkness, it was lucidity. He understood that power, like fire, can illuminate or consume depending on who wields it. To be aware is to hold that flame consciously. The goal is not to destroy the theater, but to see it for what it is, a play of human instincts, each character acting from fear, desire, and hunger for validation. The awakened no longer identify with the role they once played. They step off the stage entirely. They move from being manipulated by perception to mastering it, from pawn to player. Awareness becomes strategy, and stillness becomes strength. Once you see the mechanism, you can choose how to move within it, not as a victim of appearances, but as their architect. Seeing through manipulation is not a descent into bitterness, it's an ascent into mastery. The purpose of awakening is not to distrust everyone, but to reclaim your inner sovereignty, the quiet authority that no external force can corrupt. When you finally learn to read the subtle signals of deceit, the micro-hesitation, the false warmth, the sudden shift in tone, you also discover something else. Power doesn't need to imitate what it exposes. You don't need to manipulate to remain safe. You don't need to dominate to maintain control. Real power is presence, the steadiness that unsettles deceivers because it cannot be provoked. The manipulator's greatest weapon is your reaction. When you no longer offer it, their entire strategy disintegrates. You begin to understand that authority isn't loud, persuasive, or forceful. It's energetic equilibrium. It's knowing that your value doesn't require explanation. People sense it before you speak, in your posture, in your gaze, in your calm refusal to be drawn into chaos. The true evolution of awareness transforms defense into radiance. The moment you stop trying to win, you start influencing effortlessly. You've learned the rules of the game not to play them better, but to transcend them. You can walk into a room full of hidden agendas and remain untouched, not because you are naive, but because your clarity has become armor. You see everything, yet choose what deserves your energy. That restraint is the ultimate mark of sovereignty. Machiavelli's true student isn't the one who manipulates others, but the one who no longer can be manipulated. The game continues, yes, but it no longer defines you. You stop playing for survival and start embodying command. You've become what the manipulator fears most, someone who cannot be controlled because they no longer seek control. Every psychological journey begins with blindness. You live surrounded by gestures and motives you cannot yet read, believing words are truth and emotions are pure. Then, slowly, awareness cuts through the fog. You begin to notice patterns, the subtle choreography of dominance and submission, the unspoken hierarchy shaping every room you enter. This awakening marks the beginning of the Machiavellian initiation, the shift from reacting to observing, from being moved to moving with intent. To master this art, you must step out of the noise of constant interaction and study the world in silence. You learn to slow your responses until they become deliberate, to watch rather than to prove, to let others reveal themselves through their unconscious theater. Every glance, every hesitation, every overcompensation becomes a confession. In this stage, presence becomes your discipline. You realize that influence does not come from action, but from alignment, from the ability to hold still when others are consumed by impulse. You begin to speak less, but when you do, your words carry gravity because they arise from awareness, not reaction. You discover the difference between attention and power. One is given, the other is drawn. The strategist's path is not about manipulation, it's about precision. In every interaction, someone is reading and someone is being read. Most people speak to be understood. The strategist observes to understand. You must decide which one you'll be. To read without judgment, to move without noise, to command without force. This is the initiation Machiavelli hinted at, the birth of psychological sovereignty, where silence becomes intelligence and perception becomes control. Look around carefully, and the world becomes a mirror of unconscious communication. You'll notice that the ones who constantly explain themselves are rarely secure. Their bodies seek validation before their words do. Their shoulders lean forward. Their gestures expand too widely. Their tone rises as if pleading for acceptance. Contrast them with the ones who remain still under pressure. When challenged, they don't rush to defend, they observe. Their silence doesn't come from fear, but from self-possession. Power moves through them quietly, as if they know that every unnecessary word leaks energy. Then there are those who smile too often, who touch your arm too quickly, who laugh half a second too loud, the small tells of nervous strategy. These gestures reveal something deeper than intent, the body's confession of hierarchy. Every movement is a signal, every expression a declaration of psychological position. Dominance leans back, submission leans forward. Confidence maintains eye contact with softness. Insecurity blinks too often, searching for cues. Now turn that perception inward. Observe yourself not through judgment, but through awareness. How do you sit when you doubt yourself? How does your voice shift when you seek approval? What happens to your breath when you sense confrontation? Most people live unaware that their bodies speak louder than their thoughts. But the truth is, the body cannot lie. It reveals alliances, betrayals, desires, fears, all without consent. Machiavelli would say that power begins with observation, and the first subject of that observation must be you. To command presence, you must first study your own. Begin to move with intent. Speak less, breathe slower, occupy space deliberately. When your body aligns with clarity instead of anxiety, the world begins to reorganize around you. You stop reacting to others' power and start radiating your own. Machiavelli would remind you that every arena of life, business, love, friendship, politics, is fought not with weapons, but with presence. The body is the first territory of power and the last to be mastered. Every breath, every stillness, every micro-expression is a signal sent into the world, announcing whether you lead or follow, command or obey. Most people walk through life as open books they've never read, unaware that others are silently studying them, decoding their fears, their confidence, their motives. Awareness is survival. The moment you see how the game is truly played, manipulation loses its grip. You stop being the pawn of unseen forces and become the one who moves with precision, without noise, without apology. To see what others hide is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the art of perceiving truth beneath performance. The powerful do not conquer through intimidation, but through presence so stable that no deception can shake it. This is why Machiavelli taught perception over morality, strategy over emotion, because awareness is the purest form of defense. Once you learn to read the subtle language of the body, you walk through chaos untouched. You sense lies before they are spoken. You detect insecurity behind aggression. You recognize manipulation behind charm. This is not about control, it's about freedom. The freedom that comes from no longer being fooled by appearances. So listen carefully. This is not the end of a video, it's the beginning of a discipline. The study of posture, silence, and gaze is the modern art of power. Learn to move through the world unseen, yet always seeing. Subscribe and step into the next lesson. It begins not with words, but with stillness, where every true strategist is born.